Hello, this is Steve Wanamaker, CEO of CDO Magazine. Welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. It's my honor to have Marco Vernocchi, the global CDO of EY, and Arijit Sengupta, the CEO of Able, on the interview today. So, gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Steve.
So, we have a lot of great things to speak about. And the first thing I'd like to talk about is the first topic is this idea of leadership, data and analytics, profiles in leadership. And my first question for our guest today is, why are leaders having a hard time showing economic value from data initiatives? So Marco, why don't you go first?
Thank you, Steve. Well, let me start from a statement that that's not always the case. Okay, we also have a huge number of success stories, so that value is delivered through data. But to answer your question, right, what could be challenges? I would say that as a data officer and as data leaders, we may start saying data first. That I don't think is the right thing to do. I think the mantra we're using at EY is value first and data driven. So value first and shaping the proposition around what the business wants to achieve is the starting point. If that doesn't happen, then you have value delivery problems and also economic value recognition. That is also driving a second important point that I think it's critical to recognize that data is a core factor of production, but data is not the end product. So those elements are defining why, if you do it right, you can demonstrate economic value. If you don't do it right, if you don't start value first and data driven, then may be more difficult.
Marco, thank you for your comments. Arijit, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is I literally co-created and co-taught a course at the Harvard Business School on that specific topic called, it was called AI in market-facing functions. And the key concern was that projects were not getting started with the end goals in mind, right? So you don't do an AI project for the sake of doing an AI project. So one of the fundamental questions was, how would this project actually help you get to economic value? What would you do differently because of this AI project? And all too often, what we were finding were people were going in and saying, I got to do some AI, I got to sprinkle some AI on this. And they wouldn't start with, why would your business change? Who are the stakeholders? Why would they do anything differently based on this? Very simple example. I just was on a call earlier where they wanted to predict customer lifetime value. It's a big retailer. They want to predict customer lifetime value. And we're like, what are you going to do once you've predicted customer lifetime value? That is actually not that actionable. What is actionable is, how will my customer revenue grow from year to year? And what can I do in this time period to cause the revenue to grow in the next time period? Very simple shift, but one is actionable, the other is not. So by laser focusing on how you're going to create economic value from these data projects, what are you going to do differently based on it? That's how you get focused on getting to economic value. And people aren't doing enough of that. There's all too much of, hey, I got to do an AI project, I got to do a data cleansing project, I got to do a data lake project, as opposed to how you're going to change your business.
I talk to about 700 CDOs globally a year, and this is a common theme that I'm hearing. If someone is going to invest money, the company's hard-earned money in some type of initiative or product, there has to be some type of value or way it drives economic benefit to the organization. Or why would you paint the wall again if the color is already beautiful? Why would you do that?
And I think we have had too many years of good economic numbers where people were being a little more speculative about these technologies. I think the focus will get back to what have you done and can you prove that you've created economic value? Like we as a company decided to go with a 30-day satisfaction guarantee, which is if the customer doesn't see economic value in 30 days, they just don't pay us. And I think more and more organizations will have to adopt things like that, because if you can't create value, why are they giving you money?
Absolutely. Here's another question.
Steve, maybe just on your analogy, when I say value, so I think I'm echoing what Arijit just said, but when I say value first and data driven, to your analogy of painting the wall, value first means asking whether you still need that wall before even asking whether you want to paint it in another color. That is the power of being data driven when you really think about value creation. So asking new questions that were not possible before.
Absolutely, because what I'm hearing you say is when you think about having data, it allows you to have a more of a strategic thought process to say, just because we have that wall is a very basic example. Should we even have the wall? And what is the best thing we can invest our company's resources to have the greatest value for our partners and shareholders? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay, great. Here's another question.
Sorry, to that point, I want to give a really good example because we were just working with one of the larger insurance companies, and the conversation started with, how can I have a better model for something, right? And as part of the analysis, it seemed like they didn't need a model for it. They should just stop doing what they were doing. But to Marco's point, like, don't start with the assumption of, I need to have a better model for something, when the answer might very well be, you shouldn't be doing that. That's what the data shows.
I'll tell you, to elaborate on both your points, if you have data, it will help an executive who's been in a 150-year-old insurance company kind of take down that holy, like some of those things are sacred, right? Like if you're a business person and if you've been working somewhere for a long time, if a company's done something for literally, it could be 100 years in the case of an insurance company, to Marco's point and to your point, Arijit, having data to ask the question, should you even have the wall? It gives the executive some ammunition to make a better strategic decision. Am I hearing you guys both correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Well, here's another question to kind of elaborate on what we discussed. What can data leaders do to align with business owners and drive overall growth? Arijit, your thoughts?
Well, alignment comes in different ways. One is, what's your goal? So I always tell people to go in and look at revenue, then cost, then risk. Figure out what is it? What's the KPI that the business exec is trying to achieve? The second thing that people forget is timeframes. Like right now, the world is changing so fast. So if I'm going in and analyzing some data to find some underlying patterns, and that process will take 6 months, it's useless. It's not aligned to that timeframe, right? You actually want to get to insights this week in many cases, maybe today's data today, today's insights today, right? So understanding what is it, what's the KPI that matters for that business, and what's the time frame that is relevant, and what resources do they have? For example, if I give you a marketing project where I'm telling you to increase your marketing budget 10x, guess what? You're going to get laughed out of the room. If you do not consider the fact that the CMO has been asked to reduce their marketing budget by 50% while still delivering the same results, if you don't have that context, you can't create value for them. So understand the business objective, understand the timeframes, and understand the constraints. That's the only way to deliver value.
Marco, your opinion?
I agree with Arijit, but I'd like to also offer maybe a slightly additional perspective. So I think that the first point is engage often with the business leaders, right? In order to gain trust with them, in order to make sure that you understand what their priorities are. And then, as Arijit said, having clear plans and clear, let's say, time frames and execution programs are very important. What is also important is, to me, agree upfront the deliverables, the outcomes that you want to achieve. So to manage the expectation properly and to make sure that you're not over-promising. Because that is critically important. A plan has to be clearly understood by all of the stakeholders, because this is not something you can delegate. Data is a pervasive item which touches multiple dimensions of any program or project or any enterprise or ecosystem. So making sure that on the time frame, on the constraints and so on, it's very clear what the goals, again, what the value is, and being real on what can be delivered and a specific point in time is critical.
You know, Mark, I think you said a couple key points there. The idea of is number one, you talked about we need to agree, we need to have alignment up front. Number two, you discussed the thought of you want to have great data to help make the decisions to inform the executives, but also you use this word of get to know them and trust. You know, you can have the most fancy spreadsheets and all the most elaborate things in the world, but if you're not getting time to clearly understand and know the business executives you're dealing with, and to your point, or Jet, like you used an example of if the CMO is their budget's cut in half by 50%, and you're telling them that throwing out some crazy numbers, if you don't know that person, right? Like business is still done by human beings. And if you got to get to know people, understand them and trust them, the more time you can spend really trying to build a relationship and know them, it'll expedite when you bring good solid data, because they'll believe that you have their best interest in mind, and they'll have further trust in the data. Is that a fair statement, guys?
Yeah, I actually agree with you. And I actually wanted to point out something Marco said that is really important. He said goals and he said data.
Okay.
What people get messed up often is they go in with too much of a preconceived notion of what the results will look like. So I always tell people, align on the key goals, the KPI, and align on where you're going to get the data, but don't align on the use case yet. Because if you are going in saying, I'm going to bring a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Whereas if, let's say your goal is to grow revenue, you may find that the best way to achieve that, given the data, is a better lead optimization. It could be a better opportunity optimization. It could be an upsell optimization. It could be churn prevention. It could be partner strategy. How you achieve that goal, don't try to lock into that before you've looked at the data. Agree on where the data is and agree on what the goal is. Then find the right way to achieve the goal. Don't be a hammer looking for a nail.
Sounds good. Next question, guys. How do you scale AI in the light of talent shortage? Marco, your thoughts?
Again, let me maybe just take it one step before. So I think what is important is, as I said before, not only engaging often with the business, but listening carefully to what their priorities are and so on, because very often, and Arijit somehow mentioned that in between the lines, very often there is a tendency to take the request and then execute that as an action. The reality is very often the request is a request of help, is a request of help to solve the problem in a better way or in a way that they are not yet seeing it. So this is important because that gives a chance to propose ideas. It's important also to not give up at the first resistance, because you need to keep it simple, you need to explain. Now, why I'm saying that? Because otherwise, all becomes a capacity problem, and we will never have enough AI data scientists or machine learning experts in the world. So I think it's the first point is helping the business to size the problem and the request in a way that is manageable. Then more practically, in terms of, to precisely answer your question, Steve, about what we can do to stand up an AI practice that is of high performance, I think it's important to standardize as much as you can the methodologies, the procedures, and so on, in order to create a level of automation that creates the scalability effect. The second one is an element of finding resources within the enterprise. You cannot imagine how many talents you have within the enterprise that would like to do a new type of job, and then maybe people that graduated in science, let's say physics or maths, and they are doing jobs that are completely different from what they are aspiring to. So I think there are areas of value that are still unlocked within the enterprises. Those are ways of creating practical elements of scalability effect.
Arijit, your thoughts?
Well, the key thing there is, do you have enough data scientists is the wrong question. So like the tagline of Able is, I am able, and it's been that from the beginning of the company. because we basically said, look, you shouldn't have to have people speak data science. AI can speak human much more easily than a human learns to speak AI. So we have done this twice now, and the third time it's happening right now is at Berkeley, we do these contests, so UC Berkeley, where we take a bunch of high school students, history majors, and MBAs, and put them up against expert data scientists using their favorite tools, right? And for the last 2 years, the high school kids using Able have beaten the expert data scientists using their favorite tools by wide amounts, to the extent that last time we put up a contest for data scientists to beat the high school kids, and that prize didn't get picked up in a year. So the problem here is we still have this mindset of it's all about learning data science. We are trying to get people to go in and learn data science. No, AI will speak human to you, and it's happening already. What AI doesn't have is curiosity, domain knowledge, context of your business. So what you need to find is people inside your organization who know your business, who are curious, who are willing to try something new. And then the tooling has already gotten to a point that you don't need an expert data scientist, but that tooling cannot do magic because it doesn't understand your business. So you need that. You need curiosity from the human side, domain knowledge, and the software will handle the rest.
Marco, I'll give you the last word on this. Your parting thoughts, sir.
Arijit said beautifully. I would summarize, if I may, that AI is UI, right, in a sense, and is an advanced or augmented UI. So that is beautifully said by Arijit. Just to add one other point on the other extreme of the value chain, even today, too many of our data scientists across the world in the industry, I'm not making any specific reference to anybody, are still spending too much time on high value activities like data preparation, data cleansing, and that is very easily 50, 60, 70%. You can play with the percentage. I don't want to make it a precise statement, but how we can improve the efficiency. I said the automation, but you can call it in different ways. The quality of the pipeline before you can really start creating the value. That is, together with what Arijit already said, is the other side of the equation, and that is also another source of value. How can we free up the talent for what is really differentiating?
Okay. Well, that sums up our first part of our interview series. Arijit, Marco, thank you for being here today. And this is Steve Wanamaker, CEO of CDO Magazine. To learn more, go to cdomagazine.tech. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you.